The tremor started in my left hand first. You don't notice it right away. Your body compensates, adjusts. You start holding the coffee mug with both hands without realizing you've changed anything. 41 years clean, and some mornings I sit in this backyard and I hold my coffee with both hands like a man crossing a frozen river. Not because I have to, because I still don't entirely trust the ground under me. That is the slag. That's what I want to tell you about. I was 21 years old when they handed me the prescription. September of 1973. I had been on the floor at Campbell Works for 3 years. Open-hearth furnace, number 4, 12-hour shifts. The kind of heat that doesn't feel like heat after a while, it just feels like the air. Frank Petrosian was 31. He'd been on the floor since he was 19. Same as me, started young, family needed the money. He had a daughter named Anoush. She was 4 years old on September 4th. I know that because we just had a birthday party for her at his house on Glenwood. Margaret made a cake. I remember the cake. I don't remember much from the years that came after, but I remember that cake. It was a wet morning, wet slag near a furnace mouth. You watch your step like your life depends on it, because it does. Frank slipped. I was maybe 12 feet away. I turned at the sound. Not a shout, just a sound, a particular kind of dull impact, and he was already going. He didn't survive the shift. I was the first one to reach him. Within 48 hours, Dr. Walter Simic, company physician, a man who genuinely believed he was helping me, had me sign a non-disclosure agreement. I signed it. I was 21. I signed whatever they put in front of me. At the same visit, he wrote me a prescription. No psychiatric evaluation. He looked at me for maybe 6 minutes, asked if I was sleeping, asked if I was eating, wrote occupational anxiety on a slip of paper, and handed me 5 milligrams 3 times a day, 15 milligrams of diazepam daily, Valium. He told me it was perfectly safe. He said, "This is vastly safer than what they used to prescribe. Nothing to worry about." And the thing is, he wasn't lying. He genuinely didn't know, which is more horrifying, not less. The man who handed me the fuse didn't know what fire was. I had never heard the word benzodiazepine. I was 21 years old. My best friend's daughter had just become fatherless. I had signed a paper promising not to talk about it, and I had a bottle of pills that were going to make the volume go down. They worked. I want to be clear about that. They worked exactly as advertised, and that is the trap. In the open hearth process, you produce slag as a byproduct. Waste, oxides, silicates, whatever came out of the metal that the metal didn't need. It piles up in heaps and solidifies. After 48 hours, it looks cold. It looks solid. People walked on slag heaps. After a few days, you couldn't tell the difference between that and packed earth. But here's what they told us in orientation. The slag is still warm inside. The heat doesn't dissipate in 48 hours. The heat takes years. You can have a heap that has looked solid for months, and the interior is still retaining enough heat that the wrong footfall will collapse the crust inward. The ground swallows you. No warning. It looks identical to safe ground from the outside. They taught us, don't trust fresh slag. Test every step near a new heap, because you cannot judge from the surface what is happening underneath. 12 years on 30 milligrams a day, and my nervous system is a slag heap. 41 years clean, and I'm still testing every step. By 1974, I had stopped dreaming. Not nightmares. I want to be precise here. I stopped having any. I'd lie down and the lights would go out. Not sleep exactly. More like a switch being flipped. 8 hours gone. And I'd wake up and Frank would still be dead, and I would feel nothing about that. A fact. A recorded fact, like a temperature reading. That should have been the warning sign. Instead, I described it to Dr. Simic at my next refill appointment. He said, "That's the medication working. That's exactly what we want." He renewed the prescription without discussion. 2.3 billion Valium pills were dispensed in the United States in 1978. 90 million bottles. It was the most prescribed drug in America for 13 consecutive years. Nobody was asking questions. It was in suburban kitchens, in union locker rooms. It was in pockets at the mill, and nobody talked about it. Because why would you talk about a medication that a doctor prescribed? The thing about Valium is that it doesn't feel like a drug. It feels like the absence of a problem. You take it and nothing happens, which is the point. You don't feel high. You feel like a person who doesn't have a problem. And then it wears off, and the problem comes back slightly worse than before because the medication has been calibrating your baseline downward for months without your knowledge. September 19, 1977. Youngstown Sheet and Tube announced the closure of the Campbell Works. 5,000 jobs. Black Monday, that's what they called it. The city started dying that day. I drove to work the next morning and looked at the building where I'd worked for 7 years, and I thought, this is how the mill dies. I was already at 15 milligrams daily. By the end of that year, I was at 30. I've never been able to separate the grief of losing Frank from the grief of losing the mill. They're the same grief in my body. They both went under the same chemical suppression for the same 12 years. And now when I try to locate where one ends and the other begins, I can't find the line. Margaret filed for divorce in November of 1981. The papers said, emotional abandonment and consistent absence despite physical presence. I received them on a Thursday afternoon. I read them twice. I put them in the kitchen drawer next to the utility bills. I took a Valium. I got a glass of milk. I genuinely did not understand why I wasn't more upset. I had the concept of upset intellectually. I knew these papers meant something large and irreversible. I read them twice. I put them away. That terrified me more than the papers. March 14, 1979. 2 years before the papers, but I should tell this because the order barely matters anymore. I had read an article in Reader's Digest about women who had become dependent on minor tranquilizers and quit. The article made it sound manageable. I decided I would do this. I stopped. Day 1, uncomfortable. Day 2, the anxiety came back in waves. Day 3, I was in the kitchen making pasta for Lisa and Thomas. Lisa was 7, Thomas was 4. I had a generalized tonic-clonic seizure on the kitchen linoleum. 4 minutes and 18 seconds. Lisa timed it on the kitchen clock because she thought she was supposed to time it. She was 7 years old. She sat down next to me and held my hand and waited. When I came back, consciousness comes back in pieces. It's not like waking up. The first thing I saw was her face, 2 inches from mine. Completely calm. She said, "Daddy, you were shaking." 7 years old. I need you to understand what benzodiazepine withdrawal actually is. It is more dangerous than heroin withdrawal. That is not a metaphor. It can produce seizures that don't stop. It can kill you. Pete Marciniak was on Valium since 1972 for a back injury. I warned him after my seizure. Told him do not quit cold. February 1980, Pete quit cold. He seized at home alone, aspirated, died before the ambulance arrived. He was 34. I warned him. Dr. Simic had never warned me. By the time I knew enough to warn Pete, it was already too late for both of us, just in different ways. I never tried cold turkey again. I went back to 30 milligrams and stayed for 5 more years, because I knew what the alternative looked like on a kitchen floor with my daughter timing it on the clock. Lisa is 54 now. We talk every Sunday. We have never in 47 years discussed what happened in that kitchen. but she still flinches at the sound of something heavy hitting the floor. I watch it happen. She doesn't know I watch it. The taper started in 1984. 18 months. The medical literature had finally caught up by 1981 and 1982, confirming that physical dependence was real and withdrawal was dangerous, that the drug Roche marketed as vastly safer than barbiturates was producing an epidemic of its own. Quiet, invisible, distributed across every room where a doctor had written occupational anxiety on a slip of paper because he genuinely didn't know. I was done in April of 1985, 41 years. The first year clean, the anxiety ran at about 9 out of 10. My nervous system had been reorganized. It had outsourced regulation to a chemical that was no longer there. The recalibration takes years. The literature calls it protracted withdrawal syndrome. I call it the slag being still warm. The volume settled eventually, not to 0. It settled to about 7. Some mornings it spikes to 9 when I'm tired or stressed, and I hold my coffee mug with both hands until it passes. The mill is gone. Where Campbell Works stood, where number 4 open-hearth furnace ran for decades, where Frank Petrosian slipped on wet slag on a September morning in 1973. That land is mostly empty now. You can see the skyline from my backyard. Where the mill was, there's just sky. I look at it most evenings. I kept the hard hat, yellow YST logo, dented. I put it on the fence post in 1988, after the last of the demolition was finished. I haven't brought it inside. I haven't thrown it away. The yellow has gone pale, but it's still there on the post. Anoush Petrosian would be 55 years old now. I don't know where she is. I signed the non-disclosure in 1973, and I have never spoken publicly about what I saw until right now, in this backyard, on this May evening, 53 years after it happened, holding this coffee mug with both hands. The slag heaps in Mahoning Valley, the real ones, the physical ones from the actual steel production, they're still there in some places. They never fully removed them. And if you go out there, certain heaps that have been sitting there since the 70s, and you put your hand down near the base, they're still warm inside. I've been clean for 41 years. The tinnitus in my right ear is still there. The tremor in my left hand is still there. I know the years between 1974 and 1980 happened. I have documentation. I have photographs of a man who is clearly me at events I clearly attended. Lisa's first day of school, Thomas's Little League, the 4th of July, 1976. I was there. I can prove I was there. I wasn't there. The memory isn't suppressed. That's not what this is. Suppression implies the information is stored somewhere, locked behind something you could unlock. The information was simply never stored. The camera was there. The film was never put in. Frank Petrosian was 31 years old. His daughter was 4. I was 21. Dr. Simic told me it was perfectly safe. He was not lying. That's the part I still